She married a man who couldn't walk, then learned he hadn't told her everything. You heard that right. On the night of her wedding, Claire Hamilton found out the man she just vowed to spend her life with was hiding something. Something that would shake everything she thought she knew. And if you've ever loved someone but feared they weren't telling you the whole truth, hit that follow button, leave a comment, and let's walk through this story together. She's marrying him for attention. You'll see, it won't last a year. The words, just a whisper, sliced through the soft jazz and clinking glasses like a razor across silk. Claire Hamilton didn't flinch. She'd heard worse. But standing there, in her ivory gown, clutching a bouquet of white calla lilies, she couldn't deny it. Those words left a bruise. She glanced to her left, and there he was. Malcolm Reed, sitting tall in his sleek, customized wheelchair, nodding politely to guests. His dark navy tuxedo contrasted sharply with his warm brown skin, his metals gleaming faintly under the chandelier light. Calm, composed, radiating quiet strength. They didn't look like the perfect couple. She was a 32-year-old white woman, CEO of a nonprofit, daughter of a retired state judge. He was 38, black, a former Air Force pilot turned veteran advocate, paralyzed from the waist down after a rescue mission went wrong. But Claire didn't fall for perfection. She fell for presence. For the way Malcolm listened, really listened, for how he never once asked her to be smaller, to make him seem whole. She had never wanted a fairy tale. She wanted truth. And that man, right there in his chair, was the most grounded truth she had ever known. Still, the whispers kept coming. They say he refused treatment. She's doing this out of guilt. I give it 6 months, tops. Claire smiled at the next guest in line, a cousin she barely recognized. But her mind spun. The words, the glances, even her mother's tight-lipped nod during the ceremony. None of it escaped her. As the music swelled and guests twirled in dance, Claire and Malcolm stepped out onto the terrace. The Boston skyline glimmered beyond the harbor. A cool breeze danced around them. He looked at her, eyebrows raised. You okay? She hesitated. Yeah, just tired. He studied her a moment longer, then offered a gentle smile. People talk, but they don't know us. She exhaled. No, they don't. Then almost casually, Malcolm added, I didn't tell you everything about the accident. Claire turned sharply. What do you mean? But before he could answer, a friend, Thomas, a fellow vet, appeared smiling. Sorry to interrupt the honeymoon glow, but they need the bride for cake duty. Malcolm chuckled, squeezing her hand. Duty calls? Claire went inside, but her heart stayed on that terrace later that night. While slipping off her earrings in front of the mirror, her maid of honor, Erin, spoke up, voice careful. Claire, has Malcolm ever mentioned Dr. Kovac? Claire frowned. Who's that? Erin hesitated. He's a neuro-rehab specialist. I met him when I visited Walter Reed with my brother last year. Said he worked with Malcolm. Said Malcolm was one of the most promising candidates for their spinal regeneration trial. But Malcolm turned it down. Claire's fingers froze. He what? I'm not saying it's a red flag. But why would he hide that from you? Claire didn't sleep much that night. The next morning she sat across from Malcolm at their honeymoon breakfast table in a quaint coastal inn. He poured her coffee, casual, unbothered. She stared, unsure how to ask, unsure if she even should. He met her eyes. Something wrong? She opened her mouth, closed it, shook her head. Number just jet lag, I guess. Inside, she was already drifting, already asking questions she didn't want answered, already wondering, if you love someone completely, do you deserve to know everything? Claire never liked snooping, but love does strange things to people, especially when love feels like it's holding its breath. Back in their suite, she waited until Malcolm fell asleep, his hand resting peacefully over his chest. The steady rhythm of his breathing filled the room. She stood barefoot in the quiet, watching him. This was her husband. The man who'd once said, "I don't need you to fix me. I just need you to stand by me, even when I can't stand." So why, Claire asked herself, did it feel like something had already cracked beneath the surface? The next day, as Malcolm took a call on the patio, Claire opened his travel bag, gently, quietly. Inside, buried beneath a sweatshirt, she found them. A pair of carbon fiber forearm crutches, worn but well maintained. Labeled, "Active Use Only. Walter Reed Trial Number 17. Her stomach tightened. She zipped the bag shut as footsteps approached. Later that afternoon, they visited a local bookstore cafe. Claire watched him roll through the aisles, charming the barista with that quiet Malcolm wit. He made strangers feel at ease. Yet the man she loved had kept an entire part of himself locked away. She opened her phone under the table, searched Dr. Elias Kovac, neural spinal regeneration, articles, academic studies, trial participant lists. One headline stood out: Pilot becomes unexpected candidate in civilian rehab program. Malcolm Reed, decorated airman, surprises researchers. The article praised his progress, hinted at limited mobility gains, and noted his sudden withdrawal from the program without explanation. Why walk away if there was hope? That night, they dined in silence at the inn's candle-lit restaurant. Soft piano music drifted through the air. Claire stirred her pasta, but didn't eat. Malcolm looked at her. "You've been quiet." She forced a smile. "Just thinking." "You don't have to pretend." His voice was low. "If there's something you want to ask, just ask." She set down her fork. "Why didn't you tell me about Dr. Kovac? About the crutches?" Malcolm blinked. The stillness between them grew loud. "You went through my bag?" "That's not the point." "No, Claire, it is." His jaw clenched. "If you can't trust me, then what are we doing here?" She looked away. "I trusted you enough to marry you. I just didn't expect to find out this way." They didn't speak much that night. The next morning, Claire woke early. Malcolm was gone. Panicked, she dressed and rushed outside. She found him on the beach, pushing his wheels across the sand slowly, carefully. She called out, "Malcolm, wait!" He stopped, but didn't turn. "I didn't tell you because I needed to know. That you saw me. Not a story, not a symbol. Me." Claire walked closer, her voice shaking. "And what about me? I've been standing here this whole time, not asking, not prying, because I thought you'd tell me when it mattered." He turned finally, his eyes hollow. "You want the truth? I can feel my legs. Not always, not clearly, but I can. And sometimes when I think no one's watching, I try to stand." She stared, breath caught. "I didn't want to walk into our marriage with a secret," he said. "But I also didn't want to walk in, hoping you'd love me more if I could walk again." Claire dropped to her knees in the sand, tears streaking down her cheeks. "I don't care if you walk, crawl, or fly. I married you, not your diagnosis, but I need the truth." He nodded. "Then come with me." He rolled slowly to a small wooden ramp by the dunes. At the top stood a cane, a sleek silver one, planted like a flag. He reached it, braced his arms, took one trembling breath, and stood. 2 seconds, 3, then sat again, exhausted. Claire stepped beside him. You stood for me? No, he whispered. I stood for us. Claire didn't speak much on the ride back from the beach. The silence between them wasn't cold. It was heavy. Like a room after a storm, with windows blown wide open and everything still dripping. Malcolm kept his eyes on the road, one hand resting on the wheel of his chair, the other loosely holding hers. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Back in the suite, Claire paced near the window while Malcolm sat quietly by the dresser, hands folded in his lap. So, what now? She finally asked. Where does this leave us? Malcolm looked up. You tell me. She hesitated, her voice a whisper. I don't want you to feel like you have to prove anything to me. I know, he said, but I needed to prove something to myself. Claire turned to face him. I wasn't angry because you hid your recovery. I was scared. Scared that maybe you still believed love was something you had to earn by walking again. His shoulders dropped. That's the lie I've carried since the accident. She moved toward him, knelt in front of the chair, then let it go. That evening, Malcolm wheeled onto the small patio of the inn. With the help of the handrail, he stood again, briefly, this time with Claire by his side, not watching to be impressed, but simply present. Inside, she took a photo, a simple one. No grand speeches, no dramatic music, just truth. She posted it with a short caption. He didn't stand for the world. He stood for himself, and I stood with him. 2 days later, Malcolm uploaded his own video. He titled it, The Strength It Takes to Sit. In it, he spoke directly to the camera. People cheer when I stand. But what they miss is that sitting, staying, facing every stare, every assumption, every whisper, is the real fight. I'm not less of a man in this chair. And my wife? She didn't marry my body. She married my heart. Claire sat beside him, off camera. You could hear her breath catch in one moment. It was small, human, unscripted. The video went viral within a week. Reporters called. Podcasts invited them on. Veterans wrote in. Couples shared stories of their own. But Malcolm refused the spotlight. This was never about applause, he told one journalist. It was about honesty. On their 1-year anniversary, Claire gifted him something wrapped in worn leather, a journal. Inside the first page, she had written in her neat, looping hand, You stood for us once. But every day, you roll beside me without needing to. That's the kind of love that doesn't need fixing. Malcolm cried when he read it, not because it was poetic, but because it was true. That night, as they danced slowly in the living room, her arms around his shoulders, his hands on her waist, Claire whispered, Still feel like the luckiest man in the world? He chuckled softly, forehead resting against hers. Even more than yesterday. The video reached 500,000 views in just 2 days. At first, Malcolm didn't even know. Claire was the one refreshing the page, watching the number tick upward, like the hum of a distant train rolling closer. Comments flooded in, some warm, some cautious, some heartbreaking. I cried. My husband is in a chair too. Thank you. This gave me courage. You're not broken. You're brave. Malcolm sat beside her on the couch, brow furrowed as he scrolled through the replies. You really think people care about this? He asked quietly. Claire leaned into him. They care about truth, and you gave it to them. But with the warmth came the cold. Someone reposted a clip with the caption, So he can stand. Guess this whole wheelchair thing is just an act? Then another, military hero fakes disability for sympathy likes. Malcolm slammed the laptop shut. Claire placed her hand over his. Don't let them do this to you. He stared out the window. This is why I kept it quiet. It's never enough. You walk a little, they want you to run. You sit, they say you're faking. She didn't try to answer. She just sat there, breathing with him, like a steady metronome in a chaotic room. The next day, they went grocery shopping. Something simple, normal. But even there, whispers followed them between aisles, like shadows on polished linoleum. Two teenagers giggled near the checkout. An older man nodded solemnly toward Malcolm and said under his breath, "That's him from the video, isn't it?" It wasn't judgment this time. It was recognition. Malcolm looked at Claire as they loaded paper towels into the trunk. "Do you ever regret this?" She shut the trunk with one firm motion. "I regret not loving you sooner." Later that evening, Claire's father, Judge Hamilton, called. They hadn't spoken since the wedding. His voice was cool, measured. "I saw the video. That was brave." Claire held her breath. "That's not why we made it." "I know," he said, a pause. "But it worked." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I never understood what you saw in him. Until now." Claire felt tears sting the corners of her eyes, but her voice stayed even. "I didn't need you to understand, Dad. Just not to stand in the way." He let out a low breath. "I won't any more." That night, Malcolm opened a drawer and pulled out a box. Inside, a set of old military dog tags, dulled by time and salt. "I stopped wearing these the day I left the rehab program," he said. "Felt like they belonged to someone I wasn't anymore." Claire took the tags gently, ran her thumb across the engraved name. "But you are. Every version of you is still you. That pilot, this man, the one in the chair, the one who stood, they all loved with the same heart." Malcolm closed his eyes. She placed the tags around his neck. "Justice doesn't always come in courtrooms," she said. "Sometimes it comes in the form of a man who keeps showing up, when it would be easier to disappear." The invitation came, folded inside a blue envelope with a silver seal. Malcolm stared at it on the kitchen counter, unopened for hours. Claire had placed it there after sorting the mail. Neither of them spoke about it at first. Until finally, over coffee, she asked softly, "You going?" He nodded, but his hand stayed wrapped around the mug. The card read, "Veterans for Unity Annual Gala, Honoring Service and Sacrifice." Malcolm's name was printed under the words, "Special Guest." But it wasn't the invitation that haunted him. It was who else would be in that room. The press. Former commanders. People who once saluted him. People who now whispered that he staged his struggle. "I don't want to be a spectacle," he muttered. Claire reached for his hand. "Then don't go for them. Go for you." The night of the gala arrived like thunder on a clear day. Malcolm wore a charcoal gray suit, the military tags tucked beneath his shirt, and the chair polished until it reflected the lobby lights. Claire walked beside him in a navy dress with no jewelry, just quiet solidarity. The ballroom buzzed with conversations, clinking glasses, eyes, so many eyes. Some nodded respectfully, some looked away too quickly, and some, especially a certain retired colonel, just stared. When Malcolm rolled toward the stage, the MC cleared her throat and began. "Tonight, we honor not just service, but the courage it takes to live a second life after the uniform comes off. Please welcome Malcolm Reed." He moved slowly to the podium. The room stilled. "I wasn't supposed to be here," Malcolm began. "I mean that in every way, you think. I wasn't supposed to walk again. And when I didn't, I wasn't supposed to be hurt again." Murmurs shifted. People leaned in. You see, when I lost the use of my legs, I didn't just lose motion. I lost conversations, invitations, respect. Then I started to get some of it back. Not because I stood up, but because people finally saw me sitting down. A woman in the front row blinked, her hand covering her mouth. I've learned something in this chair. People fear what they can't categorize. You stand, they cheer. You sit, they pity. But live in between? They panic. Someone in the back let out a short, unexpected clap. Then another. Then silence again. Malcolm steadied his voice. I'm not brave because I stood. I'm brave because I stopped hiding. From myself. And from my wife. He looked down at Claire, who had risen to her feet in the crowd. She didn't marry a headline. She didn't fall for a soldier or a survivor. She chose a man. Who rolls, who stands, who sometimes falls, but who shows up. Applause rose. Not polite, but earned. He nodded once, backed away from the mic, and wheeled off stage. Backstage, the retired colonel approached him. They hadn't spoken since the hospital. I was wrong, the older man said simply. You don't need legs to stand tall. Malcolm only nodded, the words catching somewhere deep inside his chest. Later that night, on the ride home, Claire held his hand across the center console. They didn't speak for a while. They didn't have to. Finally, she whispered, You looked like yourself up there. Malcolm turned his head toward her, eyes warm. I felt like myself. It had been a year, 1 full year since the wedding, since the terrace, since the night Malcolm stood for the first time, and Claire began seeing not just the man she married, but the layers he kept buried to protect her. Their life now? It was quiet, not perfect, not flashy, but real. There were mornings when Malcolm's back locked up, and Claire had to help him dress. Evenings when she came home late from board meetings, and he already had dinner reheated. Weekends were for therapy, long drives to the countryside, and sometimes just sitting on the porch, saying nothing. But the silence between them now was warm. One Sunday afternoon, Claire found Malcolm in the garage, fiddling with an old wooden chair. What's this? She asked. He wiped his forehead. Something for the community center. They needed seating for the reading room. She smiled. You don't stop showing up, do you? He looked at her and grinned. Neither do you. The video Malcolm had posted months ago still floated around online. Every now and then, someone would recognize them at a cafe, or a nurse would stop Malcolm in a clinic hallway just to say thank you. Not for the inspiration, but for the truth. You made me feel seen, one woman told him. You made me feel normal, another whispered, tears in her eyes. And though the spotlight had long dimmed, the ripple never fully faded. On the morning of their anniversary, Claire placed a new journal on Malcolm's side of the bed. Inside the cover, she had written, You didn't change the world by standing. You changed it by sitting in the fire and refusing to burn, and by loving out loud, even when the world wasn't listening. He read it, then closed the cover slowly. You always say the right thing. She shrugged. I just write what's true. That night they danced again. No music, no stage, no guests, just the soft creak of floorboards and the hum of evening cicadas through the open window. Malcolm held her close, his wheelchair moving in slow, steady turns as Claire leaned into him, cheek against his temple. Still feel like the luckiest man in the world? She whispered. He kissed her hair. I feel like the man you chose. That's even better. Outside, the wind stirred the old wind chimes Claire's mother had given them, fragile but tuned just right. They rang not with force, but with timing, with patience, like justice, not loud, not vengeful, just present, always.